What are we listening to today?
The Immigrant Project by Girish and Astha.
Girish here from the Immigrant Project podcast with another episode. You must have seen the episode came out a couple of weeks back of Shoshana Green. We were recording in the same room, and today we have Shoshana's brother, right?
Yep.
Stephen Green, who's a managing partner at Green and Spiegel, and Astha, of course, is behind the camera, our producer. Stephen, can you talk to our audience about what you do?
Sure. We operate the largest boutique immigration firm in the country. We have about 100 employees that work for us. We have 5 offices in the United States that does U.S. immigration. So we do a lot of cross-border visas for people that are going to the U.S., people that are coming into Canada. That's us.
You have 5 offices in the US, and I'm not sure about how many offices in Canada, but are you guys still call yourselves boutique?
Well, I call ourselves boutique because we only practice immigration law. So it's a funny statement of saying we're the largest, but we're a boutique. We're a boutique
Very
in the
hyper
sense of,
focused law firm.
just immigration work. That's all we do.
Largest hyper focused law firm.
That's us.
That's you guys. Okay, so you guys have a lot of offices in the US, so I'm assuming you guys get a lot of clients from the US. Can you talk about the nature of these inquiries that you get or the kind of law that you practice?
Sure. I mean, for individual Americans that are looking to come up to Canada, there's certainly been a large increase in the interest of Canada because of the American election. A lot of policies have changed, will be changing in the United States, and some American citizens are looking at an alternative democratic country to move to, and Canada seems to be a big choice for them.
Well, I would suggest them to reconsider because our government will only last for another one year, I would say, before we change our government. So yeah, and so Stephen, what sort of background do these people have? I'm sure there must be an uptick in the past couple of months, especially after the election. But what percentage of rather these inquiries would you say are credible?
Well, I mean, maybe credible isn't the right word, but a lot of them are just exploring the possible pathways for them to get a visa to Canada. Some are successful business people, some are successful skilled workers, professors at university, really a whole diverse area of backgrounds of people looking for a different scenario with respect to the way in which they're living in their country.
Okay, let me ask you this question in a different way. A lot of our audience are American, or probably are North American. So, what sort of profile do you think would not qualify to immigrate to Canada if they are in US?
Well, I mean,
I mean, asylum
a
seekers are one.
low skilled type of person that does not have an employer available in Canada for them would not be able to come.
Hmm.
A person that is a skilled worker that's about 50 years of age, 45 years of age, wouldn't be able
No.
to come on an immigrant pathway. But with the free trade agreement, there's 60 or so occupations that if you do one of those occupations and you are able to find a job inside of Canada, it's pretty straightforward and easy for you to enter Canada and get a work permit. So, for example, if you're an engineer, you're a nurse, believe it or not, a lawyer, if you find an employer that wants to hire you, then this free trade agreement facilitates the issuance of a work permit for you.
But if you're a lawyer, you would need a license to operate in Canada, right? Or
Well,
maybe an examination.
yeah, no, I mean, if you were going to operate as a Canadian lawyer, then yes, but you can be a foreign
Ah.
representative up here.
You can practice US law.
Yes, when immigration, is looking at lawyers, for example, they're looking at their background, their qualifications. They're not looking at the licensing issue. Just like you go to law school in Canada, you graduated as a lawyer, you have your degree, but unless you get a license, you can't practice. So it would, the same thing would apply for Americans, where if you've got your law degree in the United States, you can come up here and they don't necessarily, the employer doesn't look at, do you have an actual license?
Oh, okay. Okay, let's switch gears here for a minute, Stephen. A couple of weeks back, there was a lot of conversations in Ottawa about how the Prime Minister released a video talking about there are certain bad actors that broke the immigration system or took advantage rather of the immigration system. In your opinion, and I know you have 3 decades of experience, what do you think went wrong? And how has the system changed in the past 3 decades?
Well, I think that what's happened is that a lot more individuals are practicing in the immigration area that we didn't have 30 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, the government felt that it was in the public interest to permit consultants to work in this area. Unfortunately, the regulatory body that regulates consultants has no authority over foreign consultants. So, for example, if you happen to be an Indian national, a Chinese national,
Yeah.
and you qualify to get a license as a consultant, but you're living abroad, you can do whatever you want, and the college has no authority to go after you. So that's a huge issue.
Oh,
I think that there has been a huge issue with the selling of certain processes that people think are normal, like this LMIA process. If you
hmm.
go to small towns in various countries around the world, they think it's normal to pay a
For
huge amount
LMI.
of money to get this LMIA.
Yeah, I know it's
So,
$40,000, $50,000
yes, yeah.
for
And I
each.
think that the government, in one sense, is to blame a lot about it because they haven't really educated the public enough about it abroad. So they're to blame for that. So I think there's, when they use the word bad actors, I think that the government falls into that. I think that, some people that are practitioners in the area fall into that. I think perhaps even family and friends can fall into that area where they're helping people. The problem is that there isn't enough compliance requirements of people that are helping those looking for assistance in immigration.
I have a follow-up question to that, Stephen, but I want to move to a different question for now. You spoke about government has not done enough to educate people. So the government last week came out with a campaign talking about it is probably ad campaign talking about why is it difficult to seek an asylum in Canada. Why do you think the government is doing that? Because 6 years ago, Justin Trudeau came out with a tweet, like a messaging, saying that everyone is welcome, especially asylum seekers are welcome.
Well,
Why is this happening?
right. Well, I think the government is concerned that they permitted a significant amount of students to come into this country.
Hmm.
Um, and they really just let it go wild in some respect. Um, what happened was that the federal government cut funding for colleges and universities in all the provinces.
Hmm.
Then the provinces didn't have enough money and they decided to go look at foreign students. And the system was set up that if you wanted to operate as a school, you had to become a designated learning institution,
Okay.
and that's controlled by the province. And the province was making so much money from all these foreign students that there was nowhere near the required compliance of who becomes a designated learning institution. It was just
Oh,
a free for all. So many schools got approved, in my opinion, shouldn't have been approved.
okay.
And you've got all these students that came, and then they went into the express entry system to try to get immigration because there was this un untold rumor, untold, un I don't know, fulfilled promise that if you came to Canada as a student, you could get immigration. Now, that wasn't the law. A lot of people talked about it. A lot of politicians encouraged it. But I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people believe that if you came as a student, you could get immigration. And that wasn't necessarily true for everyone. And now there's a significant amount of students that came here, got work permits, and won't be able to get immigration. And the government is concerned, are they going to leave? And that's why you start talking about refugee claims, and the government's concerned that too many people are going to make false refugee claims that maybe have been here as students, have been here as workers. So they're trying to educate the public that a refugee means you fear for your life and your government can't protect you. So they're trying to educate people, but it may be a little too late right now.
Yeah, I know the recent number that I saw. It's nearly 200,000 people that are claiming refugee status this year in Canada, which is, I think, significantly higher than last year. Okay, so let's talk about international students for a second. The recent stat that I read was they contribute around $1.1 billion to the GDP every year. This question is in two parts. First of all, in the past 1 year, especially now that government has reduced the number of immigrants that are planning to get in the country, have you seen a reduction in international student applying to come to Canada? That
Yes.
is one. Oh yes.
Yes, there's
What
definitely
could
been
be
a
the percentage?
reduction because the government has now given the message that no, just because you go to school in Canada doesn't
Can't.
mean there is an actual pathway. So that has significantly changed. I think that there's also some political issues that some of the students are, you know, feeling the foreign students not as welcome as they should feel because of political situations between Canada and various other countries. And I just think the the message that the government seems to be saying now is that international students are welcome, but not as welcome as they were in the past, and they're trying to make it more difficult for international students. And in some respects, I think it's inappropriate to cap the number of students. I
Mhm.
think we should be capping the designated learning institutions, and they're the ones that are to blame for this whole problem of I think one of the ministers said, kind of had like a puppy mill, but a student mill
Yeah.
of poor educational institutions that became designated and they really should never have, and the government permitted them to run and do this.
Do you think the recent changes that the government is bringing into the system by reducing the number of years that these international students get to work after they finish college, is it justified,
Well, I mean,
especially to people who are already in the country?
yeah, I mean, look, it's it started many years ago when Jason Kenney was the Minister of Immigration, and he made the correct statement of saying that foreign students really are the best future immigrants. Why? They pay for their own education. They then come here, and we give them the right to get Canadian experience, working, and they've sort of Canadianized themselves
Yeah.
even before they become a citizen or an immigrant. And it's it's difficult for students now. We'll have to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean the CRS scores is high.
CRS
Cost of
scores are
education is,
way too high because there are so many students that came here that got the work experience, that have the ability to apply for immigration, and the points just keep going up higher and higher.
Stephen, Mark Miller I don't remember when, last week, a couple of weeks back, announced that there are 4.9 million immigrants, temporary immigrants, who are due to leave this country in the next 1 year by December 2025. I wanted to ask you, what are the legal ways these immigrants can fight back?
Well, I don't know if it's maybe, I don't think it's as high as 4.9, but there's certainly a significant amount of temporary foreign workers that are in this country. Um, Fighting back, they really can't because, you know, you don't have a right to immigration. It's a policy by the government
Yeah,
and it's a privilege.
it's a
So
privilege.
when you say fight back, pretty difficult. I don't think,
No legal ways except claiming refugee.
well, I mean, you can try to find a pathway to get immigration. I mean, if you feel that you are a refugee, you should really understand what it means to be that,
Yeah,
and understand that if you're making a false claim, that yes, eventually you will lose that claim and you will be removed from Canada and not ever be able to
ever
visit
again.
us in the future.
Yeah,
So you better look at that pretty seriously as to whether or not you meet that definition of a convention refugee.
refugee.
And a
Yeah.
lot of people don't understand what that means.
Hmm. You said the government is changing its messaging, but according to a recent survey, Canadians know what their messaging is. They are definitely not happy with the level of immigrants that has come to the country, especially after the pandemic. And around 58% of Canadians say that immigrants are the biggest reason for less jobs and higher cost of housing.
What do
And
I think of that?
yes, what
Um,
what went wrong?
Well, look, it's a very common story that you hear all over the world, and it's always the immigrants that they try to blame for the problems. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, you know, immigrants that come here, temporary foreign workers that come here, they contribute, as you said, to our gross domestic product. They're coming as skilled workers, helping us build our homes, things like that. I just think that the messaging has not been done correctly by the government, and they're trying to fear monger in a lot of ways and blaming the potential immigrant for all their sorrows of their mismanagement of the system.
Um, Again, I want to switch gears, talk about US for a second.
Mhm.
Do you think Canadian government is scared with the challenge US has put forth, saying that it'll eliminate 11 million illegal aliens and most of them will come to Canada?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're pretty lucky from a sort of strategic way in which Canada is located. They're not going to come from the north because it's
Yeah, it's frozen.
frozen up there. We've got the United States in the middle, and then we've got Mexico south of the United States, where the huge influx enters the United States through
From South
that.
America. Yeah, through Mexico.
So yeah, there's a huge group of American undocumented people that are in America.
Yeah.
What's Canada going to do if they try to come up to our borders? We're going to have to deal with it and try to discourage them from coming up, and see what's going to happen. I don't believe that they will have success and be found to be a refugee if that's what their intention is. I mean, you're in the United States for 10 years as an undocumented worker. How can you say that you feel you're persecuted when you didn't even make that claim for 10 years, unless, of course, country conditions have changed? So, for example, if you were, a Ukrainian, for example,
Yeah.
undocumented working in the United States, and now your country's in a bit of a turmoil, perhaps. But not people that are from Mexico or all the way South American countries. No, I think you will be eventually deported from Canada, and hopefully we will have a system that will speed up, because waiting 3 to 4 years to have a refugee claim heard is ridiculous.
People are, I think, waiting for 2 years to get their permanent residency approved.
Mhm.
Now, why do you think that's happening? Why do you think IRCC is lagging behind?
Well, I mean, look, the express entry system, I'd say 80% of the people are getting their immigration within, the year. Other categories are slower. Startup visa program is slower. It's at 40 months, which is ridiculous. And I fault the government for that. There's no reason for it. They had a huge intake, but there's ways to manage it and do proper risk management. I just think that we have to look at our legal and proper programs and try to fix them, because Canada was known for years and years, as having the best immigration programs in the world.
Yeah.
And right now, it's become too politicized by the current government immigration. And we have to look at it and make sure that our legal systems work properly.
I hope they do. Stephen, I wanted to ask you, in your 30 years of experience, have you seen any case that has absolutely stood out, which you can share with our audience?
Well, I mean, I guess it would be going back to the current Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, which came out as a result of, a case that we were involved in, where many years ago there were 174 Indian nationals that came by boat to Canada through Rotterdam. They jumped off the boat in Halifax. They were detained in a military base there. And it was the first time Canada had ever experienced a boat of 174 refugee claimants on our borders. And I really think that it changed the whole immigration, policy, the way people thought about immigration. So that was a pretty significant case that we did in those days.
Well, okay. Pardon my history because I'm not sure. Was this before the Geneva Convention or after that?
Oh no, way after. I mean, you're
Oh,
you're talking when the act came out in the probably late 70s when it
hmm.
came out. Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep.
So it was way
Yep.
after that. Okay. Yeah. So were you involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, that was our case. We were involved in these 174 people. And I personally spent 3 weeks out in Halifax dealing with these cases. Pretty interesting as far as Canadian history goes.
Wow, that's interesting. Stephen, for our audience listening today, most of them are immigrants who are planning to come to Canada. Do you have any suggestions, any last messages, anything for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would, first of all, if you're going to hire someone to help you, find out who they are. I would definitely encourage you to use a lawyer over a consultant. I'm involved in the consultant's course, I teach it. And it's, a 1-year course. As a lawyer, it's much longer, of course.
Hmm.
A lawyer can go to federal court for you, a consultant cannot.
Cannot. Okay.
A lawyer has solicitor-client privilege, meaning that if you tell me something, I can't disclose it. Not so with a consultant. But some consultants are great, so you just have
Hmm.
to check out who you're going to be using if you use someone, and find the legal system that will help you. And understand that we have a selection system here, and not everyone is selectable. And sometimes you just have to, recognize Canada doesn't have a way for you to come here. Maybe in the future there will be, but currently there's no way. So sometimes Canada's answer is no, come and visit us,
But yeah.
but there's no immigration possibility for you.
Well, with that, we can wrap up the episode.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity. And this was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen.